sometimes people are really afraid of pricing up, and a lot of the time pricing up is a very good idea. People question results of market research when the recommendation is to price up more than when it's to price down. I think sometimes it's useful to just follow what the numbers say and price up if that's what the numbers say.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
I mean, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the mathematical relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving. Today, our guest is Nik Samoylov. Here are 3 things you want to know about Nik before we start. He is the founder at Conjoint, and that's the reason we're talking to him today. He's been a consultant at Bain, so he must be pretty bright, and he's a Russian that moved to Australia. Wouldn't we all like to move to Australia? Welcome, Nik.
Hi, Mark. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's summer there now, isn't it? It's winter here.
It is summer, but it's bushfire season that started early, so it's probably not the most enviable summer this time.
Oh, well, okay. We'll just enjoy our snow. How's that?
Yep.
I really want to talk to you a little bit about Conjoint. I heard of the company Conjointly, I don't know, it was probably 2 years ago. Someone sent me a note that said, hey, have you seen this company? And I looked it up and it was an inexpensive way to do Conjoint. I thought, wow, that's really cool. And then when I saw you on LinkedIn, I said, oh, I got to have him on the podcast. We'll invite him up. How did you get into this whole Conjoint thing?
Well, I did marketing at university, and because I went to Australian National University, it's very academic heavy, very research heavy university. Even though I did marketing, it sometimes felt I did stats as my major. And I really liked it. I really wanted to make use of it after I graduated. I applied to every single company, every single market research firm in Australia after graduating, got rejected, had to go work into consulting, but then had to really start doing what I always wanted to do, which is market research. And yeah, we started about 3.5 years ago.
Oh, so you started the company about 3.5 years ago. Nice. Tell my listeners, what is conjoint analysis? And we're going to try not to get too geeky, okay?
Yeah, it's a very old technique of market research. I think it's from the 60s and 70s of last century, and it has evolved quite a bit since then. These days, when people talk about conjoint, they basically mean about a survey that's a few questions long. Each question is a multiple choice between several options. Each option is a product idea represented by certain combinations of features, price points, and that can be like flavors, packaging, if it's consumer goods, price, any discount. And then they choose between several of them. They make this choice several times. And what we do on the back end, after we've collected all the responses, we look at them and see, so looks like people are tending to choose the options that are of color red. So therefore, color red is the more preferred color for this audience. So that's, in a nutshell, what it is. Yeah, it's a market research technique that allows you to understand what people want and what kind of trade-offs they make.
Yeah, so one of the things I love about Conjoint is we ask one person several questions. I tend to think it's 20 to 30, but you can correct me if that's wrong. Then we can pretty accurately predict any choice that one person would make, given us a set of features.
Yeah, if you do ask 20 or 30 questions, then yes, you can make prediction for that one person quite well, usually. These days, because of, well, I guess, reduced attention span, you can't ask really more than 14 questions, at least to a broad audience, if it's consumer goods. So maybe individual level predictions are not as robust as maybe potentially they used to be, but it's still pretty good at predicting what the market overall wants, and it's good at identifying segments within the market by looking at clusters of people who have similar preferences.
Oh, that's pretty bright. So instead of saying, I'm going to get one person to do this for 20 or 30 questions, I'm going to ask 5 questions of 10 people, and I can still get similar type answers. I just can't say this one person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Usually, so we recommend about 12 questions, and that sometimes is about, well, most of the time it's about 5 minutes for the survey.
Nice. How many attributes or product features do you put when you recommend it?
Yeah. So when we talk about Conjoint, we tend to talk about attributes and levels. So attributes are characteristics of a product. For example, let's say yogurt. So yogurt has characteristics such as taste, sugar content, type of packaging, price, discount. So I mentioned 5 of them. And then each attribute has levels. For example, sugar content can be no sugar, no added sugar, and then one more can be, for example, no mention of sugar. Usually, you can have about 10, up to 10 attributes, so characteristics of a product, and then within each attribute, you sometimes have quite a lot of levels. It's not unthinkable to go even with 100 levels, but then your sample size becomes a lot larger. Most of the time, when people do Conjoint in our platform, it's about 5 or 6 attributes. Each one has about 5 levels, and sample size would be about 300 or so for this kind of setup.
Oh, nice. One of the things I love about Conjoint is as long as we have price as one of the characteristics or attributes that we're going to use, then we can actually say, if I were to change this other attribute by this amount, I would have to change the price by this amount in order to get the same result. So now I can put a dollar value on individual attributes.
That's what you described is called marginal willingness to pay. So that's the amount of money that's equivalent to an upgrade in the feature. So what you're saying is that you can either offer a basic product for $5 or a more advanced product for $7. And the difference of $2 represents the equivalence of upgrade from basic to advanced, assuming that people like option A same as option B on average. So yeah, this is marginal willingness to pay. It's useful as a guideline, definitely. When people do actual pricing work with Conjoint, most of the time this measure can be a little bit hard to interpret. So when you want to make a decision for price, you would typically put in your product, competitor products, and then you want to understand the elasticity of demand and use that information to make your pricing decision. So that's kind of the other way of using Conjoint for pricing. That requires that you put your product in a competitive context, so not just your brand, but other brands. And that sometimes means that the price points that you can go for are not the price points that your competitors can go for. And so you need to also take into account the difference in applicability of features and price points. But in the end, you would get a simulator, so something that allows you to do what-if scenarios. So what if we offer it at $5? What if we offer it at $6? What's the drop-off between $5 and $6? How many customers do we lose to competitors? And then you could do it for $5, $6, $7, $8, and then find the price point that will maximize your either preference share, or like basically market share, or revenue, or profitability, if you take into account direct costs of selling a product. And that's the other way of doing pricing with Conjoint.
Yeah, so we're essentially doing a price elasticity type study, and we're either holding the competitor's price constant, or even if we fluctuate it, we could still say we could get $1 more than their price, and we would end up with this much market share. Time out for a quick ad. If you're currently working in a subscription business, I'm guessing this is what your world feels like. Oh my gosh, the CEO just said we need to grow faster. I already have too many things to do. Now what are we adding? Which of these things should I be doing? If I only sleep 4 hours and I come in earlier, I can get more done. Well, here's my advice. You can go with the flow and do what you're told. I mean, doing busy work and doing what other people tell you to do isn't the worst job in the world. After all, I used to dig ditches for a living. Or there's a better alternative. Take responsibility. You determine what drives your product's growth. When you choose the right activities and then execute them well, it boosts your career. To help you drive your product's growth, we put together a powerful online course called Accelerate Your Subscription Business. This course provides you the framework that helps you decide which of your tasks are most important right now. Most importantly, though, it helps you think strategically about your subscription business. not just about your tactics. The course is only $500. What a tiny investment considering what this could do for your company and your career. To learn more, go to www.championsofvalue.com. I look forward to seeing you there. What types of projects, other than just trying to figure out price, is Conjoint commonly used for?
Other than price?
Yeah, other than setting a price.
A lot of what we do is about claim selection. So especially for consumer goods. So what I mentioned, no sugar, no added sugar, same for fat, no added fat. All these kind of things are a big topic for companies. Selecting what to say on the product is quite important, especially because it's not just for marketing, it's also for building that product, setting up the factory. Big decisions can be made on the facts whether people are attuned to one statement or another statement. And yeah, so that's one important aspect of application of Conjoint.
Yeah, so you said claims selection, and I just want to make sure the audience heard that because I had to struggle to understand what you said. And I think what you were saying was, if I only have so much room on the package to claim something, what am I going to claim? Am I going to claim low fat, low sugar, great taste, something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I also heard that Conjoint was used, and I was not involved in any of these, but Conjoint was used a long time ago. Cars used to be sold where you would buy individual options. And then they used Conjoint to figure out what are the features that you would put together into those different packages and what seemed to fit well together. Have you heard that? Did you know that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so Conjoint is not only used for consumer goods, it's used for all sorts of goods. Basically, as long as you have something that's mass produced, something where you need to make an investment before you decide what kind of things you're putting together, that's when Conjoint can be quite useful. So cars, I'm not surprised. So we don't work a lot in that industry, but I can definitely see how it can be used. Another thing, though, is that sometimes if you are doing a Conjoint on one person with 30 questions, if they're not too tired of that, you can build a profile of preferences for that person. And that profile of preferences is sometimes better than asking them, what do you want? What features do you want? Because they might not be thinking in terms of the whole thing. And with Conjoint, you ask them to make trade-offs between these things. And if you are building a customized product, it is sometimes the case that people would ask to do client a Conjoint exercise to understand what is it they want and then build it to that specification. It can be used for one individual. If the client is a company, you can ask the buyer team to do it, and then that gets you to understand what is it that they want. So that's kind of the other application of Conjoint. There is a sister technique called analytical hierarchy process. There are a few of them that are kind of similar to Conjoint, but used not for market research, but for group decision-making and decision-making for an individual. Yeah, that's an area we don't really focus on, but some people use Conjoint for.
I never thought of the fact that you could use Conjoint for one customer and use that to build a custom product for that customer, because the customer doesn't know how to explain, this is what I really want. And when you do Conjoint, then you could tease out what they want without them having to explain it to you. That's really good. And so I get asked this question a lot. I just want to hear your answer. Is Conjoint equally valid for B2C and B2B type products?
Very good question. I think when you have a product where the pricing is per quote, so when you have to talk to a salesperson to get a quote for you, then the salesperson is probably the better person to know how much to charge, and then there is negotiation, then something that you can do in advance through market research. So in those cases, pricing decisions probably are better left out to a salesperson rather than Conjoint. If it's a once-off product, maybe again talk to the customer, because the customer is right in front of you in most of these cases. When it's a mass-produced product, Conjoint is essentially a way to talk to a bunch of people and use that to infer what the market wants. So I think in that case, yes. So that's the distinction. That said, some B2B products are really mass-produced software, for example, subscription-based B2B products where the vendor decides how much to charge and doesn't really vary the price by who the client is. So that's when it's really still applicable, even though it's B2B.
Nice. So tell me about Conjointly. You guys are obviously a SaaS or at least an online type software product. Do you do the work or do you just offer consulting work or do you just offer the software?
So we call it custom and automated, custom and automated projects. So automated projects is our main offering, which means that you can log into our platform, set up a study, send it to respondents, get us to source respondents, and then you get a report that's automatically produced. Sometimes, though, conjoints can get complicated, and we do a few other things other than conjoint. And you want us to do it, so we'll execute it, but as a custom project. We don't do consulting, though, so we will not go so deep into the business objectives. We basically receive a brief and execute to it.
Excellent. Excellent. This has just been totally fascinating. I've loved this. One of the things I always used to say about Conjoint when I was teaching it was very expensive. And I would use numbers like $50,000 to $200,000 for a project. And inevitably, I'd end up with people in my classrooms once in a while. I'd say, have you ever done one? They go, yeah. And they would give me a number and it's always in that range, $50,000 to $200,000. Now, this was before I ran into you guys. So I got to ask the question, what's the price range? What's the lowest price I could do a conjoint for?
So if you have a license, you can, and if you have your own respondents, well, then on the cost of your own respondents, or if you source through us, maybe $300 plus license. So license is $2,000. So if you're doing it for consumer goods, usually it's simple. You can set it up pretty quickly. You can, like, the hardest thing is actually finding images that you would put into the conjoint, and then you get the results pretty quickly as well. That said, sometimes for some industries, you have to go and do it the really laborious, expensive way. For example, industries such as telcos, because there is a million plans on the market, every company has literally, I don't know, dozens, if not 100 plans. You kind of want to take into account all that complexity. And for some industries, some applications, you can't avoid but spend, let's say, 50 or 100 $1,000 on it. If it's a simple product like consumer goods, like durable goods, like fridges, if it's phones, if it's even insurance or banking products, it doesn't need to be expensive anymore.
Nice. So I love the fact that it's not that expensive. I think one of the things that makes it less expensive is that we're expecting people to be able to do it themselves. And yet most people I talk to don't know how to do conjoint. Do you have a training program to teach people how to do this?
Yeah, so we are building tools for insights managers, product managers, marketing managers, not statisticians. We try to take away all of the complexity of that. A lot of the people who sign up and play with it actually get it very quickly. We do have very strong support, so it's something that we have to do, like, literally every day. We handle a few inquiries. So sometimes more than a few inquiries about how to use the platform, how to set it up, how to interpret results, and things like that. What I found so far in this area is that it's not possible to do it fully automated for clients because inevitably, if you're making big decisions based on a survey, you want to talk to someone, you want to be sure that you're interpreting it right, you're setting it up right. And that's why we have now a team who help with that.
Nik, I got to say, this has just been a blast, but we're going to have to wrap this up. I'm going to ask you the question, even though we haven't been talking about pricing per se, what's one piece of pricing advice that you would give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
I don't think it's very unique what I'm going to say, but sometimes people are really afraid of pricing up. And a lot of the time, pricing up is a very good idea. People question results of market research when the recommendation is to price up more than when it's to price down. I think sometimes it's useful to just follow what the numbers say and price up if that's what the numbers say.
I absolutely love that. I tell people to raise prices all the time. So that was awesome. Nik, thank you so much for your time today. If somebody wants to reach you, how can they do that?
On Conjointly website, we have all sorts of ways to get in touch with us. So the chats, email, phone, everything.
Okay, we'll certainly have a link to that in the show notes. But for everybody who wants to know, it's conjoint.ly. So conjointly website. Excellent. Episode 48, all done.
Thank you, Mark.
That was awesome. I love that. Thank you, Nik. If you have any questions or comments about the podcast or about pricing in general, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact